let's see. I know who I am. I'm Bruce Wands, and I was born in Mary McClellan Hospital in 1940, August 20th. Yes, at that point, there was the rest of our family were born there as well. That's correct. The farm was purchased by my folks in 1935 um, from a lady, Mrs. Highland. And my folks didn't know anything about farming, but they thought they wanted to find this piece of property, and they saw it in the paper. And they ended up, Mrs. Highland liked them, and she didn't want the farm to go to her sons, who apparently liked to imbibe, and she didn't want the farm because they knew they'd lose it. And so my folks were able to buy the farm, and she covered the first year in their interest or mortgage somehow, and to make sure that they got on the right foot. Bonnie Brae then was about 189 acres. It was 187.8 or 188 point something, but pretty close to 200.
Yeah.
Half of it wooded, half of it agricultural land. Well, just about everything, but it was primarily hay, wheat, and oats to raise cattle. During the war, there was a lot of cash crops that farmers would experiment with and try to raise additional money. Dad would one time raised bees for honey as a cash crop. Potatoes was another big cash crop. Turnips and buckwheat. I remember those are some different ones that they just experimented to say have extra cash on the barrel to buy a few extra things. Oh, wow. First memory. I just probably with my dad. I was about the time I could walk. Had my hand in his hand and was everywhere with him. And we'd go to town. I would go with him. He'd go visit a neighbor. I'd go with him. Sometimes the neighbors would raise chickens with eggs, and so he'd go to pick them up. I'd go with him. But spent a good share of my life, particularly early life, with him. Oh, wow. Uh, it, and it progressed as you got older, of course, but I started out with taking care of chickens. I would take care of the pigs, and then later on I'd do all the yearlings, and then I also got to take care of baby calves, getting them to wean from their mother to a pail and that sort of thing. Cats and dogs didn't count, but we always had plenty of them. Well, we started out in the main cow barn, and we had 16 stanchions, and then we added 8 more. Dad and I helped. Dad did, and I helped when he put the addition on, and we had 8 more on that side. So, and then we had the younger yearlings and the calves, and so probably at one time we would have probably close to 50 to 60 head of cattle. The milking cows in the winter would stay pretty much inside, and we'd feed them around. But we would always let them out when we were cleaning to get some exercise and that sort of thing. And but in the summertime, yes, let them go up in different pastures and make sure the gates are closed and the fences were hog tight and bull strong, and of course, you had to go get them at night, bring them down. You had to go find them all and call them home. Yes, we had dogs, but they were just mostly as company. They, they were Rusty was an old pup that mostly collie, and he loved to follow the tractor. He'd travel with it with miles. Dad occasionally would do custom corn planting, and he had the John Deere B that he bought in 1941, and it had a mounted corn planter, which is kind of unique, and we still have it at Derek's Bonnie Brae West, and we even planted popcorn with it 2 years ago, and it still runs, still works. Oh well, with the farm came I think 3 horses. One was blind, and one was Lady, and one was Laddie Boy, and Lady was a Percheron. Laddie Boy was not a Clydesdale. Um, I can't remember, but they were good horses. I remember getting between them at times, and horses, if they feel threatened, will move together. And there isn't anything more frightening when you're a little guy and they decide to come and squeeze you. And one time we were up to bring the horses back down, and Dad put me on Laddie Boy's back, and which was fine, big fat workhorse, and legs stretched clear out, and one of the animals hit a piece of tin, and they spooked, and they took off, and of course I went onto the ground, but didn't get stepped on, thank goodness. But yeah, pretty scary. Oh yeah, they use them for plowing and everything, and they were the tractor back then. He bought it in Hoosick Falls, um, and I wish I had the receipt with me, but I know we still have the original estimate between a John Deere A and a John Deere B, and it was just I think $100 difference between the two tractors, and that made the difference. He didn't feel he could afford the extra. I think, and I want to say it was about $800 for that John Deere B back then, and with the mower, including the mower. So, and the A was $100 more. So he went with the B, and it worked out to be a good tractor for us. Well, there was been the three of us, Dickie, and Tasman, Tammy, and myself, and I was a year old. So, oh yeah, yeah, and he appreciated having that, and it was horses are cantankerous, and uh, Dad didn't get along with horses as well as Mom did. Mom could handle horses better than Dad. He came later. Billy, and I'm not sure how we acquired Billy, but he was a character. Uh, we hooked him up to a cart. We even got Aunt Lois to ride in the wagon with the cart, or it was a wagon converted to a. And that one of the funniest pictures. We didn't think we could get her in there. She sport enough to do it. Yes, and selling milk. So the milkman would come every morning, or every what milk days that they came. It wasn't all, daily, as a rule, because we had storage um, that we would store in the cans, and that was back before bulk mailing milking, and so we'd have these 40-gallon milk cans, and put those in a water cool trough from the spring, and it would keep it cold, or into a cooler in the milk house. Yeah, we had a spring, kept all of our livestock uh, plenished with plenty of water, and the whole house. Well, they knew there were several springs. We had that's one beautiful thing about it, and one of the downfalls is springs are wonderful things for keeping your crops watered and moisture and drinking, and but they also will put a tractor down to the axles and then you have to try to figure out how to get them out. And you know who probably has a record of getting them stuck right here. Couple times we'd always later on we'd have a second tractor or a neighbor. Um, I'm sure at times when it first happened, Dad probably pulled him with the horses. uh, wouldn't surprise me, but yeah, I buried him more than once. And one time I remember in the lane there was a spring in the middle of the lane, and I thought I could get through, and I buried the case tractor, and it was there for, I think, right close to a month before it got dry enough that we could get to it. We had one on the back of the farm that was a lifesaver. I mean, and we had a metal cup in there for years.
Is that the lane as you walk? As you walk up the back lane?
Yep, back one of the back fields, and it's always had fresh water in it. And you know, you'd be out there working, and you drink up your allotment that you carried with you, and then what do? Well, you go to the spring. The thing I remember most was when Uncle Dave would fly. He was um, Mom's brother, and he was in the Air Force, and he would fly in formations. They'd be moving planes to Westover, Massachusetts, and he would occasionally get permission to fly out of formation and come down low, or he at least to be able to wave with the wings. And he also ended up flying the 36s, B-36 and the B-47s, big bombers. And yeah, he was kind of an interesting uncle, and we followed him. But he would call us and let us know but they would be moving planes, some of the prop planes from manufacturing or wherever. And a lot of women used to fly those. We had a gal in our small group at church that she did that. That was Whiteside Church, yes. And yeah, that was close. It was in walking distance, running distance on the way back home. Um, and yeah, it was just across the field by car. It was probably about 4 miles, maybe. Across the field was about a mile, maybe a mile and a half. And but yeah, and that was just a life of the small rural community. Everyone basically in the community belonged to that church and went to church, and everything was centered around, from all the church activities, from plays to Christmas pageants. You know how on marching around. I remember Brother Dick. He was in singing a talent show of some kind, and he was supposed to be singing with a neighbor girl, and she was playing the piano, and he was singing, "Rachel, Rachel, I've been thinking, what a great day this would be." I can't remember the rest of it, but she got choked up and panicked and left him hanging high and dry. And that in the school. I went to school in a one-room schoolhouse, just about a mile over and down the hill, and from the neighbors. And again, that was either road or through the fields. Through the fields was not good in the morning because it was pretty wet, but that was the shortest way. I start with first grade. We didn't have kindergarten back then, and that was before kindergarten was invented, you know. But yeah, first grade, and I was probably should have been held back because I was just 5, but the teacher liked me, and so I was a teacher's pet. Got invited to go early. We stayed all day, and I remember we used to get lunch, government subsidies. We'd have tomato soup, we'd have crackers, we'd have peanut butter, um, and then of course as we always had chores as we got older in there, and we went through fifth grade, and Karen and I visited a one-room schoolhouse in Kansas 2 years ago, and boy, did it bring back memories. I probably was the only first grader, um, but they would combine little ones uh, and slow ones like me. So I was probably in the same class for 3 years. Oh yes, inkwells. I remember the maps that would pull down from the world. They have map of the United States, map of the world, and heated with a wood stove. And of course, that was the job of older students to bring the wood in, make sure it was dry. We always had wood stacked in the shed next to the outhouses, and that was the older boys' jobs to bring wood in and take coal ashes out and put them out. And then there was some people would go down and get the water. They had a ceramic blue and white jug, probably 3 or 4 gallon. So it was to take two of you to go down to the neighbor and pump it out of their well. It was basically a spring-fed well. One teacher I had, and her name was Maud Snell, and she was very partial to me. She was just a nice elderly lady. She might have been 13, I don't know, but she was older than I was. And yeah, and she just ran the school. We had coat rooms. I remember when you came in, there was coat rooms where you put your lunches and um, coats and boots, and everybody would get dressed and go home. Oh no, no buses. No. We had the neighborhood was kind of unique. We had our own ball clubs. I mean, we had um, there was four of us wands, and then Scott eventually came along. But by then, some of the olders were gone, and then there was 4 Chase kids, 5 Hunkerfords, I think, and Nancy Hall was a single, and then the Clement girls, there were 3 of them, and that's just one house after another, within half a mile. So we always had plenty of neighbors to do things with, and then beyond that, there were other families that birthday parties, Christmas activities, church group people would be a little farther away, and particularly as it got older, Dad and I did a lot of that sharing with neighbors. Dad had the first hay baler in pretty much, I think, the county. So he did a lot of custom baling, and then so that was a big thing. And other neighbors had corn harvesters, and so they would do the corn, and Dad would do the baling, and someone would do this, and some of it we just do together. Did a lot of stuff with the Hortons. Did a lot of stuff with the Brownells. Did a lot of stuff with the Connors, Just some of those neighbor relations were just amazing. When you think you go out and work and then sit down at noontime, oh wow! I could tell you stories about Ada Horton and her pies. Amber, her daughter-in-law, also was a tremendous cook. They were down on the flats. Um, their son still owns a farm, and but it was a big farm, big fields, and they ended up switching. They started doing chopped hay instead of bales. You chop it up and put it in. At that time, we had trucks that would go alongside, and I remember more than once we had no doors on the trucks because you had to get in, out, and unload them and stuff. And I remember the old Model A Ford hit a woodchuck hole and it stalled. And of course, the chopper keeps going, and as he went by, he filled the cab full of chopped hay and down your neck. Oh, boy, you were dirty at the end of the day. And I worked a lot with Ray Horton. Ray was probably 10, 15 years older than I was when I was in high school, but young at heart. And he had a 46B and not a 41, and I could beat him until he started playing with the governor, and he put a string on the governor, and we'd race from farm to farm. And I remember we were both haying in the mow, and he got overheated, and we got him out of there and got him cooled down. But it was scary. Oh my gosh, we had a Model A. I think that one had a rumble seat, and then there was Fords, a lot of Fords. We had I think a Kaiser and a Fraser. I don't know, but they were all used. So nothing was ever new. And it was, I think we even ended up with a Studebaker, but mostly Fords. And one Ford was a 48, 49, and Dad was running with chains on it, and a chain broke. And before he could get it stopped, it wiped out the rear fender with the chain flapping. I remember getting stuck one time coming back from a hockey game or someplace down Troy or someplace, and coming back home, and the snowbanks was one of the cars, and Dad hadn't get out and shovel, and we all pushed, got through it. But my gosh, some of those roads and times were. And when Mom was working at the hospital, she'd come home late at night. In the winter, Dad would have the tractor up the hill running, waiting for her, because he'd have to pull her through the drifts between Hunkerford's and Beeman's house. Oh yes, yes, yeah. And I remember one time we had brand new. The town had just gotten a brand new Oshkosh, and we had a big drift just up from our driveway towards Chase's, and but it had blown off the field, and they asked if we had permission to come up our driveway through the fields because it had blown off there, and they could drive the truck, but they couldn't make it going up the hill. And we got up to Chase's and came down, and they let me ride with them. I remember coming down, and they hit that snowbank, and snow. It was something. But yeah, and of course they didn't. Eventually, they started sanding, but those hills were perfect once they got the snow off. A couple of cars drawn over them or tractors, and then it was good sledding. And we're always neighbors at night, candles and whatever for light. I remember Mom. Dick was gone because he was someplace, and he and Mom would banter back and forth about how Mom was a fast driver, and she was going to get. And at the time we had, I think, a '56 or '7 Ford, and it would go down the highway pretty good. And Mom borrowed someone's motorcycle helmet, a pair of dark sunglasses, and a leather jacket, and stood next to the car and took a picture and sent it to Dick. And I remember, I think someone's got that picture somewhere, a hoot to see. But they were always bantering. Mom and Dick had a lot of bantering back and forth. Yes. Dad wired that and changed it from direct current to the current alternator that we have today. But yeah, it was the old post and wire. Well, yeah, usually 5, sometimes a little earlier. We had chickens, and that was my job primarily, to take care of chickens for a lot of years, and that was a staple. You had chickens, fresh chicken. You had to go chase them, catch them, and get them ready for the eating, and then you had the eggs and stuff. And one time I was trying to get my spoiled sister to feed the chickens for me because I had something more important to do. And she wouldn't do it. She said, I'm not doing it. And, well, I found a rock and I whooped it at her and caught her right in the temple. That was a good shot. Yeah. I remember that one clearly. Yeah. I got disciplined. But, I didn't get disciplined often. I do remember being bad, and the hardest thing was to do. You had to go out and cut your own switch, and you bring your switch back. It wasn't big enough. Oh, so you had to go cut another one to make sure. So you didn't want to get one too small. You didn't want to get one too big either, And Dad, I don't know why, but he would come get me and spank me, and I'd run from him. And so he chased me, and then I'd move left and move right, and then he'd get laughing, and then I'd get laughing. I'd fall down, and he'd get on, catch me, and of course by then he's laughing so hard he couldn't, and it was just funny. And so I didn't get disciplined heavily, but I was probably better than the other kids. I would have fed the chickens there. Uh, they're all involved. Particularly, I remember Dick was involved, and Mom was the leader of. There was a boys group of 4-H, and she did taught them how to cook. And they made their own special cheese bread sticks and homemade tomato soup. And I remember I was young enough to enjoy eating it. It was good. We had there was Skydecoke Fair was a Rensselaer county, though we were actually Washington, but you could still display. And Dad would take stuff down there, and I would tag along and take stuff. Dad took Hoggy one year. He had a trailer and pulled it with a tractor, clear to Skydecoke and back home. I think he had the horse hauled, and Dick showed the horse, who was a Percheron. But Then the 4-H fair started in Hudson Falls, South Hudson Falls, and it was in the maintenance building of the county. And the first year I went up, Dick Chase, just a weekend fair, and they had a big circus tent, and I had chickens, and I don't think I had any other animals. But anyhow, I remember woke up and some guys had gotten up in the middle of the night and let chickens out. Or switch cages with them and stuff. I remember JC woke up with a chicken standing on his chest. Yeah, I also got one at Scattercoat Fair. But then I ended up showing a lot of taking hogs, and I took cattle. I raised jerseys, and that helped on the farm because it was mom and dad bought 2 jerseys, and I got the first calf, female calf, and Bambi was mine, and she was a great producer, but she was also a beautiful show animal. And I showed her. I ended up having to show another girl's had a Nashire calf that was spirited, and she couldn't handle it, and so I showed her calf, and she got first place too. But yeah, 4-H was a lot of fun, and I ended up working with the organization to help. We had our own food booth, and we did pepper burgers, grilled peppers and hamburger, hot item back then. And I did tractor driving. Didn't do any tractor pulling, but most of our tractors we didn't. We wanted them to work and not pull. So most of the crops went back to the animals.
I see.
And occasionally, if we had some left over, we would sell that. We sold straw and hay to the racetrack in Saratoga. Head, health, hands, and home. I don't have them in the right order. Yeah, with our neighbors, and we had the one hut up by the first crossing. Then we ended up. Dick Chase and I made a tower up in a brush lot, and we worked our tail. I think about 17 or 18 feet high, and we slept in that before. And then we said bigger things and higher towers we could do. So we went to the back of the farm, and just about where the new owners of that property have a home now, and in that same vicinity, and we were chopping down trees and dug the holes, and I had a dull axe, and it glanced off and went through my boot, and right between the little toe and the next toe, and fortunately didn't hit a tendon, just cut it open, and had to walk down back home with the boot full of red stuff. But went got stitches and let it go from there. But and then we always played at the Big Rock. There was up in Skiff's Woods, up from Chase's. Big Rock in the woods had a great fun. Yes, we had an old refrigerator box, and we hauled it up by that first crossing, and we slept in it one night, and Mom heard coyotes and got Dad up, and he came up with a flashlight and woke us up. He thought we'd be scared to death, or Mom did. So we had to go back and sleep down in the house. Yes, oh, there were always coyotes, still are out there. Well, yeah, I was about 9 years old, and we were hooking the baler up at one of the fields, and uh, Dad had the John Deere, and so he backed it up, and I was getting ready to put the pin in the hole, and he came back a little farther, and the power takeoff shaft, and where I was holding the pin, just pinched my finger off, and oh, he felt so bad, and so he scooped me up and took me to the hospital right away, and Dr. Romack saved most of it, and haven't missed it since. I thought it would keep me out of the Army. I thought, that's just trigger finger. You can't shoot with that. But he heard how many cowboys that I had gotten, and during World War II, I wanted one finger, you know. Losing the finger?
Yeah.
Oh, I remember clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Did you
I
realize?
remember Dad picking it up, and looking at the tip of it, and just. And someone said, "Didn't you say that to might sew it back on?" No. Yeah. It's in Cambridge. Yeah, it was probably 7 miles trip. I missed some school. I don't know how much, but yeah, I missed some early because it was in the end of haying season, which had been the latter part of July, August, and we start in September back then. My folks carried foster kids. We had some of Tammy's boys came. I think some of your family was there too, and at different times and during different stationing. And so yeah, we always had lots of kids around. And foster kids were more prevalent later on. Scott was exposed to some foster kids, and he felt a little bit slighted, maybe, and it could be because your mom was always trying to be fair. Well, the school had burned down, and the central school in town, and so they kept the elementary school or the one-room school home open longer than they had hoped to. Then they built a new school, and they held school in churches and like Grange halls and wherever they found space to run different classes. And we went to the one-room schoolhouse in Coila for sixth and seventh grade. I think, yeah, sixth and seventh was in Coila, and then after that they closed down the one-room schoolhouses and consolidated into the Cambridge Central School System. Yes, yeah, yep, I did. Yeah, we bused. Wow. And we bused, it was sometimes a 45-minute ride. And I did a piece wrote for our alumni newspaper last spring. The best I can recall about riding a bus because my sisters corrected me on how. And she, but we had a couple of really good bus drivers. Pete Messina, I think, drove, and he ended up having a gas station. And then we ended up a lot of years with Tommy Hopkins, and Tommy was very good bus driver. He could get your attention in a heartbeat if you were misbehaving. We'd play on the bus, or we'd do everything from playing cards, marbles, trading marbles, um, and but that 45 minutes sometimes a long, long route. Occasionally, we would ask to get off down near the church and run up the lane, see if we could beat the bus home. And if you were fast, you could, or at least get close. We got a long time. No air conditioning, of course, and yeah, yeah, he was, and he would come to every game that he could make. A lot of football games would be tied up on Saturdays, so he missed a lot of football, but he made all of basketball. But the cows would suffer on occasionally, but home games he would schedule around and get him so he could make it. Yes, both were fun. We had it's a small centralized school. Started out playing 6 man, and then had so many kids out. We voted to go 11, and that was fun. Everyone was close. We had some pretty good teams, both up and down, so you're as close practically with uh, guys a couple years older and a couple years younger, because you all grew up playing on the same teams together. Oh yes, we would do swimming down in the local ponds, neighbors' ponds, um, brooks. We would build forts. We would do sledding parties, and some of the sledding parties frequently would be with parents. Parents would be out at night too, with a whole bunch. Tobogganing was a big thing, and we do it in our yards and our backyards. A mile from the back of the farm to the across the neighbors and down where you would stop if you kept going. But it was a long mile back up too, and no four-wheelers back then. Oh yes, yes, we did a lot of as far as you wanted to walk. it was it wasn't just drop it off at someone's house. It was yeah. If someone knocked on your door, you know how they got there. Oh yes, oh yes. And then I do remember that the neighbors in the church group had a couples club, and mom and dad were very active in that. And they'd play cards. They would have um, activities. They do square dancing in our house because we had the parlor room and we had the dining room, so we could have two squares going. And I remember Dad reinforcing the basement floors, those rooms in the basement with special posts because you get eight people jumping up and down on a square dance. But yes, right. And they had lawn dance. I remember they had giant Japanese lanterns they put out in the front lawn, and they had dancing out there. Um, Halloween one time they decorated our basement. I remember Lathrop. She was about 6'6", and he came dressed as Baby Huey, and I forgot what just he came in, but he had this long flowing baby, and he had a bottle, and he had to come in through the basement when we made ours squishing worms and raisins and rubber bands for spiders, and hung them in the basement and all that stuff. I mean, we spent hours doing that, but seeing Lathrop climb up the stairs with his bottle in his hand, crawling up, well, that's vivid in my. And then they had a gal. I can't remember her first name, but she was a blonde, and she was in the corner of the dining room between two windows, a window to the west and a window to the south, with a sheet across, and she had ketchup down the sheet, and she'd been stabbed. Oh, that was frightening. I mean, very realistic. chains and someone was in the other part of the basement playing chains on the thing. But those adults were just nuts, I think. But they had a good time together, and a lot of playing cards until all hours of the night, and then they'd be up milking the cows the next morning. Oh yes, yeah. Particularly, you hear them in the summertime. There's no air conditioning. You always have, and frequently because it was so hot, we'd sleep out on the porch. Uh, and for a number of years, we had a large surplus army tent that Dad got somewhere, and it had a wooden platform, and we had bunk beds in there. So, and that slept, I think, 8. Out by the shop, um, where we used to raise pheasants.
Pheasants?
Yeah, that was another cash crop. It was through 4-H, and I got I think I had to pay 50 cents for each chick, and we went to the YMCA in Hudson Falls to pick them up, and then we brought them home, and for every one we released, we got $1, and that was they were hard to raise. They we had to make no corners in the thing so they wouldn't. Otherwise, they had a tendency to cuddle together and smother. To get them to drink water and food, we had to use marbles in their food so they would peck at the bright colors. And then once we got old enough that we could let them out to build their strength and stuff, and young chicks, they could dig better than a gopher, and so we had to have a fence, and then of course your pheasants can fly, so we had to cover them, and so it was trying to keep them corralled was a lot of work. But we raised them for 3 years, and I don't think any of them ever stayed on our farm. They all went to the neighbors. Yes, yeah, and to reintroduce them back into the environment. Oh yes, I raised cattle, I raised hogs, and they helped me get through school.
How's that?
Well, my favorite Sal, she was right prolific in having babies, and she would have 11 to 12, which in a litter, and I could crawl in the pen with her and sit with her and play with the little ones, and she was just as docile and never bothered at all.
What was her name?
That was Clover Girl. Yeah, and she was a good pig, and but yeah, I raised and sold the little ones. They got a little older, and yeah, they put me through school without any debt. Oh, Christmas was a big event, and depending on who was coming home for Christmas or who would be there, but it was very enchanting when we were kids. We would sit with the Sears catalog or Montgomery Ward, and we'd pour through the pictures of what we were going to have, our dream list, and then we write them, and then we light them in the fireplace and send them up through smoke and to the North Pole. And then we ended up, of course, decorating. It was just we had planted a lot of trees through 4-H as well, and a lot of evergreens. And so we would always usually go get our own. And one year I came back and Mom had me go get one. And I think I cut 5 trees. and went to town and bought one. Or I took her to town and she bought one. So I said, that's the last time I. But next year, she had one marked with a big ribbon. So I didn't have to make the decision. That wouldn't have met the quota. That's too skinny, that's too fat, that's too tall, that's too short, that's too warm, that's too cold. Yeah. Just under 1,000, I saw. It just seemed like there was always somebody there. We've had a big bedroom in the back and upstairs, and that where Dick and I used to sleep. We probably could have 8. Tammy's room was huge. It was at least 2 or 3 always in that room. And downstairs we had one. And that didn't include if there's someone who was going to sleep on a porch or in a couch or something downstairs. But we always was somebody was always there. Yes, Dad did a lot of the grocery shopping, and of course Mom did. But he enjoyed it, and we used to tease him a lot because this one checkout lady would always call him Honey, and we said we know why he wanted to go, and he grumbled. I was in 4 years. The first 3 years I was on active duty, and coming back when I was in Vietnam, I was due to get out. I was in Vietnam a year before that. Went in May, about the first part of May, and came back home in April. I was with the 4th Infantry Division in the Central Highlands as an infantry platoon leader for about 4 months, and then I was a company commander at called Echo Company, and then I was a headquarters company commander after that. Got a little bit easier. A platoon is normally about 30, but we never had anywhere near that number. We were lucky to have 20. And the same, so where you have a company of 120, you're lucky if you had 80 people on the ground. As a platoon leader, you're supposed to have 30, but you didn't have. And then as with a company, when you're back responsible for at usually a base camp or a forward base, we'd have engineers under us, we'd have mortar, we'd have the headquarters company and commanders, staff, security, perimeter, could be anything from another company to an ARVN unit that would be defending. So you had a number of different scenarios of people. Well, my first sergeant was with me all the time, shared a tent, but out in the field, you shared the same bunker with everybody. Each group, you built so many bunkers and you manned it and you slept close to it. Did your share of perimeter walking or whatever it took. As a platoon, we traveled almost daily.
Oh,
wow. But you dug in every night. You moved during the day. Mostly, we didn't do much night moving. Thank goodness. Yeah. You get back home to clean sheets and
warm food.
Yeah. we came back, had time on leave, and we drove back to the farm, and then went up to Limestone to see Big Brother and his family. It started shortly after we moved here, mainly through our church. We had uh, once a month we would get together. We had up to about 25 people who would just commit that Saturday, and we'd go out and build for habitat. And the first day we went, it was terribly icy and it's cold. And I said, people don't do this, really? But yeah, that's how it started through the church. And that was probably about 2004, 5. Our team leader, the gal who put it together, was Sherry Holt. But we had several different guys that had done Habitat themselves, several different years and stuff. Um, but they're just members of the church. Oh, we did anything and everything. Back then, it was hammer and nails. You didn't have power tools. That was not allowed. It was too dangerous. And we were all going, huh? But I just loved their mission, what they were about. We always had site supervisors that planned it and had everything on site for us. I really liked doing it, and some of the families that we touched were just unbelievable. But we built that one year when we had significant funding. We built about 22 houses. So we had Wednesday teams, Thursday teams, another group, then volunteer groups like the churches will come on the weekends, and so we had a lot of free manpower. Probably 30 from brand new homes, but we do much more than that. We do we call it brush with kindness or neighborhood revitalization. That puts lets people stay in their homes, and we and large bathrooms and wider doors, accessible showers, toilets, winterization, insulation, windows, ramps. So and then we also do a certain amount of landscaping, and so that people who can't afford to move, don't want to move, they can stay in their home, and it's just with their friends and neighbors close by. One is I love kids. I love coaching. I coached at the Y. In my first job, we coached high school kids that couldn't make the high school teams, and they come down to the Y, and we'd give them some direction, and that was kind of an experience. We would travel from town to town and set up a schedule, and we'd go to Waterloo from Dubuque, and then next weekend we go to Cedar Rapids, or then Davenport would come up and play, and so and then at the end we'd always have a state tournament through the YMCA, and some of these kids were quite good. They just weren't good enough or had attitudes not good enough for the high school. And little kids have a difficult time shooting free throw. That's quite a ways for a fourth grader. And so I showed them a couple of times. Dad's underhand set shot was kind of down between the legs and throw it up in the air. Dad was deadly. I mean, it's easy to block, but if he got free at all, that was in the bucket. And I started coaching with my grandson, and he said, "What do you want to call you?" "Oh, just call me Coach Grandpa." So all the kids do now. Help with the track team, cross country team, and I even ended up one year with soccer. I know very little about soccer, but we didn't have anybody to coach it. And our athletic director said, "I'll help you if you will do it." I said, "I'll be glad to do it if you'll help me." for me, you couldn't have had a better child life. Parents were very supportive. I said I spent a lot of time with Dad. He's a pretty good influence. Great family. Still is. Thank you.
Chuckles when the preacher said, for better or for worse.
How lovely it was. Thanks for the memory of Schubert's serenade, little things of jade, and traffic jams and anagrams and bills we never paid.
How lovely it was. We who could laugh over big things were parted by only a slight thing.
I wonder if we did the right thing. Oh, well, that's life, I guess.
I love your dress.
Do you?
It's pretty.
Thanks for the memory of faults that you forgave, rainbows on a wave,
and stockings in the basin when a fellow needs a shave. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the memory of tinkling temple bells, alma mater yells,
and Cuban rum and towels from the very best hotels.
Oh, how lovely it was. Thanks for the memory of cushions on the floor, hashed with Dinty Moore, that pair of gay pajamas that you bought and never wore.
Say, by the way, whatever became of those pajamas?
Huh?
Huh?
We said goodbye with a highball.
Then I got as high as a steeple.
Did you?
But we were intelligent people.
No tears, no fuss.
Hooray for us.
Strictly entre nous, darling, how are you?
And how are all those little dreams that never did come true?
Awfully glad I met you.
Cheerio and toodaloo.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.